Hello everybody, it's the Historical Gamer once again, and today we are going to be doing something a little bit different. We're going to be doing a multiplayer game of Panzer Corps II. This is part of a tournament that Slytherin is putting on for the anniversary of Panzer Corps II. In this tournament, there's 8 streamers that are participating. 8 streamers are gamers. Das Tactic, who you may know, he's been on the podcast before, and we've I think we did like a Distant Worlds things with him. Hexaboo, LT Gaming, Richard York, who I've done some things with as well. Strategos Xenophon, Tactics with Joe, the Historical Gamer, that's me, and Twiglets 2. We're all going to be competing in this sort of Clash of Streamers game. In today's video, we're going to be looking at the first battle in that sort of tournament, if you will. It is the battle for Bug River. It's basically the German assault to encircle Warsaw from the east. We're going to be playing as Poland, so we've kind of got our backs to the wall, although in this actual tournament, you actually are able to play effectively from both sides. So the way this works is I play as Poland once, and Xenophon plays as Poland once. So we play 2 games simultaneously. The replay we're looking at right now is just me jumping straight in, playing as Poland. Obviously, you know, you can see here, I'm trying to minimize the influence of his air force. I'm trying to shoot down or at least badly damage his aircraft. I have set up my position as the Poles here in the left flank in front of Warsaw at this river position with some artillery behind us to support, as well as a couple of airborne units. My hope is to use the river to effectively, you know, pin the Germans back and keep them off of our position here. I don't have a lot of prestige points to draw from reinforcements for the Poles. That is a completely different scenario for the Germans, who have quite a bit of prestige to draw from, but the Poles do not. They're basically, they get what they start with, and reinforcements are kind of a difficulty here. I did make some tweaks to my starting sort of roster. I added an additional anti-aircraft gun unit, stripped out an infantry unit, and I think I had one 50 prestige fighter unit that I also pulled out as well to get a second anti-aircraft gun, because I thought, hey, I'm not going to match them in the air, but I might be able to at least lessen the effectiveness of the Germans here by using anti-aircraft guns as sort of an area denial tactic. Now, again, the tactic on the left flank is to hold on that river line as much as possible. The tactic in the center here around Settlis is to basically just bloody the enemy if they want to come across the river. One of the things you can do in this game is if you attack an enemy when they are on a river hex, I believe they get a pretty substantial penalty. So you can see that here with my armor rolling forward on this infantry unit in this river. They lost 6, and I didn't lose anything. I lost a little bit of sort of suppression, if you will. But that's about it. Now, I also am going to try and go for an objective position on the lower left flank. There's sort of a German position already here. If I can take either of these towns, that'll give me a little bit of prestige, which I could desperately use to reinforce some of my troops. But basically, we've got Settle East, Warsaw, and then Brest here along this river line here that we're trying to hold. I'm assuming this is the Bug River that we're trying to hold the Germans back on. And as much as I can, I will use the river to my advantage, because it does take an enemy unit a full turn to cross the river, like unless they have bridging equipment, maybe Pioneer units get an exemption, but or if you're crossing at an actual bridge. But generally, like if you're trying to cross the river, you can move into the river hex. You can attack the unit behind the river hex, but you can't actually advance more than 1 hex in a given turn into a river. And so that's what I'm trying to, effectively trying to use the river to bottle the enemy up, force him to come at me, hit him when he's in the river, and then, try to keep him there. As much as I can, I'm going to be aggressive in this playthrough. You can kind of already see it with that moving the armor forward to hit those exposed infantry here. My goal is to basically just try and gum up the works. I don't think I'll be able to outright win this battle, but if I can gum up the works, inflict as many casualties on the enemy as possible, I think that'll be a big advantage for us. And so I'll take the casualties, I'll take the eventual breakthrough if I can hold the enemy back. The other reason for that is the way this game is scored is every single objective hex that you hold, each turn you hold it, you get 20 points, and then You also get points for the value of the prestige of the unit you destroy if you do destroy an enemy unit. So again, casualties, inflicting casualties on the enemy of paramount importance, and then also just trying to, trying to prevent any hexes from falling and dealing with the eventual collapse later on. Because in my German playthrough, if I can take some objective hexes before, before him, then I can start racking up a difference here. And you can see it here, but Bialystok, this is a hex way up to the northeast, very vulnerable. In my German playthrough, I make an effort to capture it turn 1. I think I technically capture it turn 2. But as the Poles here, I'm just going to go ahead and do what I can to hold Bialystok and inflict as many casualties on the enemy. I attacked with my anti-aircraft gun, anti-tank gun there against that armored unit. I weakened it a bit, but I decided to hold back and leave my infantry unit in position. I also moved this light artillery unit here on the lower left flank forward so that it can now cover the infantry unit in this town in front of Warsaw on the river. And then I've got some reserves there, so if that lead unit is destroyed, I can move another infantry unit up into its place, hopefully before the Germans actually get in position there. Again, hold the Germans on the river. That is the goal here. And then maybe using my aircraft while I've got them for some air recon. We already attacked somewhat unfavorable results, but we did inflict heavy casualties on a German fighter unit there, and now using this remaining fighter unit for some recon. Doesn't look like the Germans are attacking Bialystok up in the upper right with a whole lot of stuff. I see one heavy infantry unit and one light tank unit. They haven't committed a ton there. In my playthrough, I actually committed a artillery unit there and was able to overrun the enemy position pretty quick thanks to the artillery support. It doesn't look like Xenophon Strategos has actually done that. Meanwhile, he did successfully destroy my anti-tank gun this turn, and he got an overrun, which means he could attack a second time toward Bialystok. He also used some air units to suppress that anti-tank gun, but then it looks like his attack has shifted. He also did attack... Did he attack those infantry on the river there? Because that tank unit's lost 4... No, he didn't. Now he is. But one of the nice things about this early playthrough is that the German armor, while it is effective, it's not a Tiger tank here, guys. Like, I can pretty badly shoot these guys up with regular infantry units, and where possible, I did swap out regular infantry with heavy infantry in the pre-battle phase. I was able to make some tweaks, which unfortunately I didn't record, but I did swap some stuff out there. You can see here, I'm just trying to inflict as many casualties on those German fighters as possible to minimize how much of a difference his air support makes. Meanwhile, you can see he's trying to cross the river at multiple points here with his armor to get across toward Warsaw. I've got my artillery here, which is trying to hit the enemy tanks that are in the river itself. And you can see it's got a little yellow icon here, which means that they're suppressed. The lead unit on the river of mine is down to 9 health, which is not great. And in this case, I'm actually going to swing this armor unit around and hit the unit that's in the river here that's been suppressed with an armor unit of my own. The Polish tanks are actually slightly better in some cases than the German tanks. And then I'm going to go ahead and see if I can still hit this vulnerable infantry unit here that's in the river, I think. So let's do that. Probably should have moved the artillery to see if we could get it in range to hit first, but I didn't. Alright, let's hit this. They got a recon car that might be kind of flanking Settlese. They haven't moved through the river yet, though. I can move this armored train here and get some more suppression on these guys. Won't actually kill them, but it'll at least mean that they won't be, super effective against me. And then I think I'll keep the troops at Bialystok on the defensive. I don't want to lose any entrenchment benefits or anything like that. We'll keep them in position and just make the enemy come to me, because German machine gun tanks are not very effective at rooting out entrenched troops. While, I got a 1-4 here against this Panzer, is it a 38? Nice, 4-1 there. Heavy casualties. Again, we pulled that armor out of Settlese. We replaced it with an infantry unit, but we just inflicted very heavy losses on this armored unit in the river. Actually, 2 armored units have suffered. Well, we're not done yet, so we'll attack with the infantry. They will take some artillery fire and some damage on the offensive, but they did inflict 2 casualties on the enemy. Move our armored car up here, do another 0-3, and we'll drive that tank back. Move our infantry unit. Do we have anybody who can move? I don't know that I want to take a 2-to-1. But it's worse if I move, so... I think I moved all those guys? I thought I had one more unit that can move up that way. Meanwhile, on the southern edge where I'm trying for those 2 German bases here to the lower left, artillery bombardment to start, hit them with infantry. That weakened them more than... We weakened them more than they weakened us. Looks like they are making a flanking maneuver with a panzer unit through the woods here toward Brest. We do have an armored unit there that could move forward here to try and hit them. I don't know that that would be smart. I don't know what else they've got out that way. I like my anti-tank guns sitting there next to Brest in the woods, so I may just hold them in place. But it does look like we've inflicted 60% casualties on one tank unit here in front of the town, 70% on that unit behind the river, and then 40% on the Panzer 38 that's in the river. Let's use our fighter here. Okay, so there's no other German units over here? Okay. Well, so if there's nobody else over there... I don't know. That's pretty much everybody, I think. I think I moved everything that can, with the exception of that armored unit on the right flank. I keep looking, I'm like, there's gotta be something I'm missing here. Also, anti-aircraft guns can be pivoted down to be anti-tank guns in many cases, so that's a useful thing to be aware of. But so far, we're on turn 2, and the Germans have yet to take an objective. So that's a pretty good result for us, I would say, as Poland, because by this point, I've already taken Bialystok in my game. And if you guys want to see the other game, I will. I debated doing alternate turns here, but I thought it would be harder to follow going from one side to the other and then one side to the other, so I didn't do that. You can see as Stukas come in on our tanks over there on the left flank. They were just outside the coverage of our anti-aircraft guns, so they were very effective. He's going to try and strafe the troops in Bialystok up at the top of the map, but didn't really do much. Infantry attacking our infantry in this town. These troops here in this town have been difficult to dislodge. He probably should have used the artillery bombardment against them before the infantry attack, but he didn't. Meanwhile, the recon car swinging around to the right, as well as that tank we had already seen there over toward Brest. And the German anti-tank guns are trying to soften up our infantry. Those anti-tank guns took heavy casualties. Infantry also, so heavy fighting in the sort of south-left. I don't know that that's a thing, but lower left. Meanwhile, he took this town here on the river, so he's... I guess maybe he thinks he's broken through. Wow, 3-7. His infantry attacking Bialystok got wrecked. Also, the tanks, 5-1. Machine gun tanks attacking towns, not a good recipe for success. Alright, so the Germans moved into this town. They took it. I'm gonna see if maybe I can retake it. Our artillery can hit a couple things, but it is vulnerable if the enemy decides to attack it. So our infantry here is at a 5. They're pretty weak. We go ahead and use our artillery to effectively bombard these German tanks in the town. Move our recon vehicle up here, attack the artillery that would support them to inflict some losses on them. We didn't lose any men, but we did get a little bit suppressed. Now we can move our armor over here. Can anybody... Ooh, the infantry can do 1-4. They are going to have to go through some artillery fire, but we did at least neutralize one of the batteries, and that's a Pioneer infantry unit, so they're very effective. So we drove that armored unit out of the town, and now we can move our own troops back in to retake the town. And we can also inflict some pretty heavy losses on the enemy troops behind the town, or on the left flank along the river there. So we can hit the artillery beyond the town or the infantry in the river to try and sort of secure our position here. Now, my only hesitancy is the fact that moving armor into a city, it feels like it'd be better to position infantry there, but in terms of the follow-up attack, the armor definitely has the advantage there. So, let's see. We could use our Air Force first. Go hit these tanks in the river, or this Looks like they've got some troops mounted up on a truck that we could bomb, too. I'd like to try and destroy that panzer unit, because, again, you get points for destroyed units. So our infantry can move through here, or we can go with that armored unit. Motor cars already moved. The armor could move to the right flank and do some damage to that artillery piece, too. But the artillery piece is preventing me from being able to launch a very effective attack on the infantry in the river, even though they're already kind of suppressed. I'm just not sure. I think the infantry makes the most sense, although the armor gives me the short-term advantage. Right, we'll hit the infantry in the river. We inflict 6 casualties on them, and they surrendered, so that unit got destroyed because they had nowhere to retreat to. German troops blocked their rear, and they were in the river, so they were kind of freaking out, I guess. So that was a very effective attack. Plus, because we retook that town, granted, it's kind of a wonky mechanic, but because we retook that town, we get 100 prestige, which now I can use on reinforcements. That is a big deal for Poland. Alright, let's use our artillery here to bombard these tanks. Turn them yellow. Move our train cars over to support Warsaw too, but we'll use our armored train here against the enemy armor. That's a direct attack. We inflicted 1 casualty on them. No troops at risk crossing into Citadel East directly, so we can pull our troops out of that town, leave it unoccupied, and then attack the enemy tanks in the river. A 0-2. They didn't surrender, but they did get driven back. Armor near Warsaw. I don't like the idea of moving my own tanks into the river. That feels vulnerable. I'd rather the enemy that be there. These guys already moved. So again, now we have reinforcements. That is something to consider here. As I kind of dilly-dally on what I'm going to do next. Alright, we'll issue some reinforcements. We'll use that money that we got to strengthen these units. Now, everybody starts with 0 experience in this battle. That is not the case in the second battle in the tournament. The second battle is Kasserine, and the American units start with 2 experience, the Germans with 3, whereas in this one, everybody starts green. So, going with elite reinforcements, which is a more expensive option, doesn't make a ton of sense in this case because everybody's already green, so it makes more sense to go with, I guess, not elite reinforcements. Meanwhile, we attacked the enemy armor in front of Bialystok, drove them back. We've got this German armored unit here in front of Brest. Let's move it over here, see if we can stack up 3-on-1. We get some attack bonuses by having multiple units sort of able to support the attack. So the anti-tank guns and the tanks themselves inflicted 3 losses on them. We now moved our infantry in here, and technically we have them encircled, although the casualties were inflicting those last 2 attacks, not great results. I was hoping to maybe force them to surrender, but we did not. Nonetheless, the enemy armored unit there down to 4 hit points. We do have 1 unit back here at Vlodov, which is sort of the lower right-hand objective. We'll try and get them in the fight. And then we've also gotta do stuff here in front of this airbase. So let's... The infantry's weaker. We could potentially destroy them sooner. Anti-tank guns usually are more vulnerable to infantry, though. So we'll go with the infantry here. Attack and drove them back. They're down to 3 hit points. We'll leave those troops in place, I think. And that should be just about it for this turn. We've pretty much already moved everybody, I think. Looks like some of his air units he didn't use this turn. He was probably reinforcing them after the casualties they took over the last few turns. Now, he will have enough prestige to replace his losses, so that is something like... It's great that we destroyed that 1 unit. It gives us points in terms of the victory of this battle, but in terms of you know, permanent victory, again, the reason I don't think this is a winnable battle for me per se is that the enemy can easily replace those losses. He's got like 2,000 prestige in his bank to start the battle, whereas the Poles have none. effectively. And we only had a little bit that we were able to draw on for some reinforcements because we retook a town. So that's another thing to consider. But I think that's going to do it for this turn. So we'll move forward to turn number 4 here and see what the enemy has in store for us. Okay, so moving to turn number 4. This is turn 4 out of 15, by the way. The enemy has still not taken any objectives. He has not committed any further forces to the north. He attacked Bialystok again with infantry against my dug-in troops in that town. And again, his troops were bloodily repulsed. I don't think he's got the force up north to ever take that objective unless he deploys some new troops that way. Meanwhile, in my game, I took that like 2 or 3 turns ago, so by this point in the game, I've got several... Well, not 100, but I've got like 180 or so point lead, I think, at this point. He keeps bloodying my troops, but he's yet to destroy anybody. He was not able to retake the town here on the river. It'd be tempting to push past the town and try and hit those infantry units coming up, but I don't think that's wise. I think the better approach is to maybe go for his artillery, which is a little bit vulnerable here directly in front of us. We will lose some suppression, but I think I can attack this unit and then withdraw. So you can see here we inflicted 4 casualties on them. All they did was a little bit of suppression. I can move my infantry forward actually here on the flank now that they've reinforced a bit, and we could inflict another 3 casualties on the enemy artillery. It looks like it only ended up being 2, so the estimate was wrong. Only slightly, though. We could pull our tank unit back here. Make room for another attacker to come in here. Maybe that infantry unit. And maybe we'll get lucky and destroy the enemy artillery. And we'll go with our recon car, because it can attack and move. So, it attacked. It didn't destroy the enemy. It drove it back. I could pursue through the gap. Push through here and destroy that enemy artillery piece. It might be a little bit... Let's see if we can strafe him to death. Yeah! Our air unit did better than expected and destroyed that enemy artillery piece. So, more victory points for us there with that unit destroyed. And we will take the conservative approach and just reoccupy this town with the infantry rather than racing through and trying to push forward. Because again, all those enemy tanks around there, other enemy artillery, enemy air units, that'd be beyond my air cover. You know, that would not be wise, I don't think. Meanwhile, the enemy did reinforce this infantry here, so they're heavily suppressed with our, after we bombarded them again. We drove them back again with our Polish infantry here. We're driving toward the objective, but we're not there yet. Enemy troops are fully suppressed here. These guys who had been encircled, we'll see if we can finish off this tank. Anti-tank hits it, it runs. Our own armor attacks it and destroys it. We get an overrun too, which means we can move again. I'd rather actually just pull back. Again, this is a battle about knowing how aggressive to be is important in this fight, and I don't want to over-pursue. So we will move some infantry up through this wood line. They're a little less vulnerable in the woods to enemy units. Try and destroy the enemy infantry here. We don't. We drive them back in front of Bialystok. The armor is at a 7, but suppressed, so they likely won't attack the town effectively. They probably wouldn't anyway, and then the heavy infantry's been really almost destroyed, driven back. So the threat up north to Bialystok, basically non-existent. Armored trains aren't all that useful in terms of destroying units, but they can suppress units pretty effectively, so that's why I fired at that tank. And then we've got these enemy infantry caught in the river. Go ahead and inflict heavy casualties on pioneer troops, which are, you know, those are basically engineers. They're very good troops. I don't know why I didn't use my artillery first. I should have done that. Instead, I'll just suppress the armor there. You can see it's red now, which means, again, fully suppressed. I should probably pull these infantry back, right? Like, again, I'm destroying his units. I've got a little bit of a prestige left. I can do some reinforcements, but probably just better to pull these guys back. And then move my armor, swing him from the Warsaw line over to the Silesia line here along the river, see if maybe we can push back one of these 2 enemy infantry units. Because the other thing to keep in mind, too, is if you inflict heavy losses on the enemy, even if you don't destroy them, you might knock them out for a turn. Because it does, you know, when you reinforce, you can't attack with the unit the same turn you reinforce. The only question is, at what point do I start taking casualties that are more than I can bear, right? Like, once a unit becomes a 3 or 4 hit point, it's probably not combat effective anymore. But that infantry unit almost certainly won't do anything next turn. It was pushed back. It's back to a 3. Plus, now it's on the wrong side of the river, so it's got to use 1 turn to cross the river. So it's effectively not able to capture a hex for at least 2 more turns. It's kind of how I'm thinking about it anyway. Feels like we've fully repulsed them on the right flank. The center, you know, they could get some units across the river there, but they're not an immediate threat. Up in the north, they've got to recommit to new troops toward Bialystok, which could be outside our line of sight. They certainly could have more troops out that way, but I don't see anything. I'm assuming next turn will be a pretty light turn because the enemy is so badly beaten that they need a turn to regroup. Maybe 2 if I was them, but I don't know that he can spare it. Again, if you consider every turn that I'm holding these towns that he hasn't caught up and he hasn't taken them, that's more victory points for me, and he's kind of, at this point, he's behind. And meaningfully behind. Again, not impossible. If he breaks through and takes these objectives quickly, he could certainly catch up. Trying to get these troops here in the rear into the fight. I don't think he's going to have paratroopers or anything like that, so no real risk of him dropping in behind our lines. He's got to break through the front, and I need some fresh troops, so pulling these troops up from the south makes sense. I'm just trying to decide whether it makes sense to go for the left flank or straight ahead toward the main objectives. In the end, I decide to move them forward straight ahead up toward the objectives. Use what little prestige we had left to reinforce that infantry unit and probably just enjoy the turn. That should be fairly quiet. I don't think I have anything else here to do. We could move our armor in these woods forward to support the infantry headed up that way, or we could swing them back across the river to support Settle-East or head toward Warsaw. Warsaw seems to be the most imminent threat. Settle-East, he's not even on the right side of the river, and Warsaw, while yes, he isn't, that's where he's got sort of a concentration of force that, with artillery and air, could potentially break through the lines. But I think we're safe for another couple turns, at least from an imminent collapse. And I think my main fear here was that there'd be an imminent collapse in a game like this. By the way, if you haven't already noticed, you know, we upload these turns this is basically Play by Email Plus, which I think is something that Slytherin originally sort of crafted, was this ability to have this integrated play by email. You're not actually sending email files back and forth. You just go into this menu in the game here, and then it keeps track of your games against your opponents, and you access the files from in this menu. You hit play, you end your turn, it uploads the turn, goes back to the other side, then their play light lights up, and then they can play it. So it's play by email, but it's very streamlined in a way that I think is much more user-friendly than any other play-by-email game that I think older gamers are probably familiar with. But a very, like, for these types of games that are not playing asynchronous, you know, multiplayer games, it is, I think it's well done. My last aircraft, that last fighter goes down, but at least it caused the enemy to need to spend sort of the attacks of both its fighter units, so he won't be able to do anything with them. I don't know if he'll hit me with a Stuka this turn. Meanwhile, fresh infantry coming up. They're trying to attack our troops to the left flank of the town. Here's the Stuka, but our anti-aircraft is in range, so it suppresses the Stuka, so its bombing is less effective. He's trying to force the river near Salis still. He's reinforcing the troops in the lower left in the Bug River map. But you know, there was a little bit of fighting there that turn, but it was a pretty quiet turn, I would say, by the by. And so I think we're doing okay. You know, I feel like with these reinforcements in the south, I'm getting into a position where I may not be super well positioned to win these fights, and I also don't have any prestige left to to reinforce my own troops. So I'm trying to get in here. You know, the hope here at this point is I don't think I'll defeat both these enemy troops. He keeps reinforcing them. I haven't been able to finish him off. But my hope is I can cause the enemy to retreat away from one of the towns, jump in there and take a town to get 100 prestige so then I can reinforce the boys. Meanwhile, these troops are going to move to the left. He's finally moved a unit adjacent to one of my victory points. See, this is the closest he's gotten to a victory point here at Celeste. But I switched my anti-aircraft over to anti-tank. I think. I will. Or did I not? Yeah, here they are. So 1 to 4. Unfortunately, I already moved my infantry, so I should have... It would have been nice to attack with something. I could have finished that recon car off if I had not already moved my infantry and they had been able to get in there. As it is, we just crippled the recon car. They won't be able to fight again this turn, and probably not the next. But we didn't destroy them. Infantry here could... I've got infantry in the river still. Again, as much as I can push them off that river line. Because anytime you push them off the river line, you buy yourself 2 turns effectively. Anti-aircraft against those Stukas. He bought a self-propelled artillery piece there. Well, he replaced... So I guess he replaced the artillery piece he lost. Meanwhile, trying to just keep the enemy busy. Here, we can attack out of this town. The enemy artillery will fire in defense, but... those odds didn't quite go my way. They were 2 to 2. I'll move the infantry. I don't like that I moved them into the river there, but it is what it is. Meanwhile, those other troops already in the river can't really do anything in a favorable way, so probably best not to attack with them. But we can move the recon car forward, attack with it. It inflicted 2 losses on the enemy, who's now pretty badly shot up. We can move forward as well. Back into... I mean, we've got to move something into the town. Move our anti-aircraft forward so all these guys are covered by it. And probably just leave them there. I don't think they're going to attack with a 7 versus a 14. Meanwhile, the enemy troops in the river here are at 0 to 2. I think I'll take advantage of that. Not sure why the artillery sometimes fires in support and sometimes doesn't there. But we got a favorable attack there, and then a second favorable attack and drove the enemy infantry back. Nearly destroyed them. Didn't quite finish them off. Move into the river here to attack this enemy unit, which just, I believe, reinforced as well. So they were driven back also, giving the enemy no time to breathe. Move our armor back towards Celeste. There's no T there, but whatever. These fresh infantry also moving towards Celeste. My anti-aircraft, I want to keep it intact, so I don't want to move aggressively with it, because I used them in an anti-tank role versus those recon cars this turn, but I'm going to want to be able to switch them back to anti-air if the enemy comes around. If you're switched into anti-tank and enemy aircraft show up, you don't shoot, so it's best to have them set to anti-aircraft between turns, unless you're defending against an actual attack. Ground attack, that is. Alright, so I feel a little bit weak on the right flank. Kind of debating whether I want to move my anti-tank or my infantry around, but I don't want to lose my whole right flank. I don't really want to move these troops out of Bialystok. I'd love the chance to wreck that enemy infantry there in the river again, but then that would leave the town to the Germans, so we'll keep our troops there. It looks like, I think around the center of the map, this turn's probably going to mostly be the enemy reinforcing. Left flank will probably see a strong enemy attack. Those armored units are all fully reinforced from the previous turn, so... Meanwhile, my troops in the center, you can see, are starting to get pretty bloody. That armored unit's down to 6, infantry unit down to 4. Left flank infantry is at 14, 12, and 6. It's an okay strength, but it could quickly sap and disappear into nothingness this coming turn. We'll see. But hey, I mean, we're in the 6th turn, and no objectives have been taken by the enemy yet. Meanwhile, he just drove that infantry back. I don't even know if he's destroyed a unit yet. Although, now he does. So, we suppressed that Stuka. He destroyed that infantry unit. But definitely this battle's going our way. In my German campaign, I know I've taken Bialystok by now. I don't think I've taken anything else. This is right around where we take Celeste. So we do take a second objective, but then he actually takes those airfields in the lower left. Not to spoil the potential series that might air, but he does take these airfields from me in the lower left in his playthrough. That would have broken things open if he hadn't been able to take that as Poland, but the fact that he did kind of kept things close to this point. And again, he keeps banking on being able to break through and take objectives en masse, which he would be able to do if he can break through this front, and he's kind of getting in position to do it so. You can see he's got effectively a salient created with the self-propelled artillery, the infantry, and the armor all on this river town. And I can't even really effectively attack the self-propelled armor because it has armor, so it's not like infantry where you can very easily, you know, deal with it. My goal here is to limit the exposure that my troops have to the enemy, so if we can push one of these units in the river back, we can get it back to like a 2 attack versus a 3. Likewise, again, just trying to drive the enemy off the river here in the center, near the bend in that river. And apparently there's some German troops that he left on a truck. He moved them too far so they couldn't dismount, so our infantry got to shoot them up pretty good. I don't like taking 1-to-1 losses in a scenario where I have no reinforcements left and the enemy has points, but it was 2-to-1. It was unfavorable to me, but we did it. Why did I move my armor there? I can't attack. Strange. Should actually move this armor back so it's under the cover of air. Meanwhile, my artillery go for those enemy troops in those trucks. I think this is him getting a little desperate, where he left troops on trucks in places I could hit him. He's just trying to move more quickly, because by this point he's got to feel like he's running out of time and he's behind in the score, maybe. And he's made no real inroads to breaking through, and again, because of that river, I've said it many times already today, but he's 1 turn to cross, 2 turns to be free, so, you know, you got to move more quickly, because they aren't even on the river yet, right? It's probably just banking that I won't be on the other side, which is not true. Alright. I don't think the self-propelled has very good range. These infantry here are just going to die if I advance them, so let's move them right next to the anti-aircraft guns. We'll pull our troops back off the river. That will expose our troops in this town to more of a salient, but it is what it is. I want to buy time. I don't want those units getting destroyed this turn. I want to buy time. So maybe I can bring troops from the center over to support them. Shift this artillery just a little bit to be able to possibly get into position to cover Warsaw or Silesia. This guy's already moved. The infantry will move. It's just a question of where. They can't get at those trucks, unfortunately. Same issue with the river as the Germans are facing. Alright, move them left. Meanwhile, my own troops are... The dream of knocking out this anti-tank gun seems more or less gone. I bombarded the infantry with my artillery in the hopes that I could buy my infantry here some time. We'll start pulling the infantry back, mainly to act as a delaying force, because if he does break out of that lower left-hand portion of the map, I mean, the whole map is empty. I don't have any troops here on the right flank other than those 2 units at Brest. So if he does break out there, he could take those objectives from the rear. And obviously this game was played over many days, so you can see each time we load a new turn how much time is left. It started with 2 weeks. We played, most days we played 1 turn per day, but there was one day we played 2. It was not a very fast pace. It was a 2-week round 1 that Slytherin set up. You can see at this point we're down to less than 5 days. And then there was like a 2-day gap where he didn't turn a turn around, so now we're down under 2 turns, or under 2 days. So this is sort of really where the rubber is meeting the road. You can see he continues to attack in the south left. I know that's not a thing, but whatever that is. against my infantry there, trying to drive me back, and he does manage to destroy the infantry unit there. So now all I have between him and some of these objectives is the fact that there's not a lot of time to turn turns around, and then also that we've got that one artillery unit. I could possibly pivot a unit down from Sedalis along the roadway there to get reinforcements in there more quickly, but again, most of my troops north toward the river at this point. You can see the casualties are mounting. He's moving in more air units. You know, he's gotten my Air Force out, so now he's able to use these BF-109s as air-ground attack as well. They're not as good at it, but he's still using them for that. And now he's really sort of honing in on these tanks along the river of mine, moving this armor out so that they can't get easily destroyed since they only had 2 hit points left. Apparently the 13th, 7th Tank Polish Division won a medal because they withstood attacks from 3 or 4 other enemy units in a single turn, and they didn't break or get defeated. So they're heroes, I guess. They've got 1 tank unit which could be across the... Well, I guess over by the left, they've got a couple units on the river, but the Salis area along this bend in the river, they got 1 armored unit that could potentially be used to break out. Full hit points and everything against fairly battered units. The right flank near Brest, still no idea if he's got any troops there in the fog. We'll bombard these infantry here on the lower left and then pull back 1 hex. I don't think his anti-tank guns will be able to chase me effectively, so probably just his infantry, unless he's got any of those units mech'd up, which I don't think he does. I think they're all foot-bound. I don't even think they've got horse-drawn. Alright, move here? We can hit those infantry along the river? Maybe? I'm really not sure what to do here. He's got multiple armored units across into the river hex in positions to attack vulnerable units, be it a 3 infantry unit or a 6 recon unit. I gotta use my artillery to try and lower the effectiveness by which the Germans will attack, because that suppression does carry over to some extent. So you can see here the recon car will attack. It does do some damage. I could switch the anti-air unit into an anti-tank here and move it forward. I'll pull these 3 infantry back so they don't get destroyed here in an attack. Move my anti-tank unit forward, inflict 3 casualties on the enemy, and drive him off the river hex. So again, that buys 2 more turns before a breakout. At least before a breakout materializes. His infantry in front of the town are pretty suppressed. They're kind of orange colored there. Move these infantry back, mainly just to try and avoid getting it destroyed. Maybe they'll get out of reach of the enemy air. And then it's kind of like, what do you do with these tank units that are pretty badly shot up along the river? I guess we could move him probably against the 10 strength unit. We can move the infantry between them, and then we could have a mass attack where you have 2 units adjacent to the hex. And if the armor did retreat, you could always move them, you know, attack the infantry in that river hex. Or we could move this infantry up here. Maybe we can destroy this. No, I was going to say maybe we could destroy that pioneer unit. We could, possibly, if we push forward with our tank, but that would be suicidal for the tank. So in any event, we push that pioneer unit back. We'll bombard that armored unit on the river. This 15th 7 TPJW, whatever the heck that abbreviation means. Sort of the key one to the defense on this bend in the river, I think. 0 to 3 would be better odds against this infantry. So we'll do that. Even if they attack out of the river, they won't be effective at 4 strength. Move this armor over to the left of this enemy tank unit here. They'll also protect if the enemy tries to cross back into the river with that unit we drove back, and we drove them back. So now, once again, only a very under-strength pioneer unit in the river. It'll be before turn 9 before he can exploit any kind of breakout along the river. And with less than 2 days left in the Let's Play, or the tournament, I'm feeling pretty comfortable. I've got like a 200 victory point advantage, which is pretty solid. Again, still something he could come back. If he could somehow take 2 objectives right quick, he could potentially get right back in this thing. Also, with all these very vulnerable... Here's the other thing. The value of the units that you destroy matters a lot here now, because you can see the Polish units are very weak. So I'm assuming, you know, if he takes 2 objectives quick, that means he also is going to break through and destroy some of these units. That 2 strength infantry, that 5 strength armored unit, there's a 4 strength infantry unit near Warsaw, a 3 strength infantry unit. He could get a lot of victory points fast if he did that. Also, possibly moving this weak armored unit south to counter the enemy infantry, but I'm guessing they're on foot, so they're probably not an immediate concern. Let's move this infantry toward Warsaw. I'm a little bit worried of a potential breakthrough here, so move them along that rail line. We'll move the armor south. I don't think... They're not going to destroy that infantry unit, but I don't think the infantry unit, even though they outnumber them hit points-wise 2-1, I doubt they're going to be... Well, I don't know, but I doubt they would destroy them. German infantry don't have very good anti-tank stats at this point. You know, it could move our artillery so that it has better coverage. Maybe even attracts the enemy air a little bit. He's got some heavy infantry moving to the right as well, so probably best not to move the troops near Brest. Maybe we just keep everybody else stationary here, the guys who still have units or attacks left. I don't want to take 3-1 losses. That's just silly. And we already moved we already attacked with the artillery, and the infantry is already done. We can move the armored train. To what end? I don't know. You know what's interesting is I never really explored in this particular battle, but that rail line that moves along the river, behind the river line, could be very effective at moving troops back and forth between Brest and Warsaw as needed. Because you can mount troops up in trains. We haven't done it, but you could do it. And you actually do use it a bit in the Kasserine battle, and it specifically calls it out in the Kasserine battle. But we're going in here second to last turn before the time runs out. He's going to try again, moving toward Silesia. He's going to try and attack these infantry. He did manage to encircle them. He inflicted 4-3 on that first attack, 4-3 in the second attack. But those are still pretty heavy losses for his own units to bear. Stuka here nearly destroyed that armored unit on the bend in the river. Infantry's going to attack our troops in the river. I don't manage much there. Aircraft are going to come in through and try and finish these ground units off. They don't manage to. They actually survive. They're down to 1 hit point, but not good, but they're still alive. Artillery is suffering 4-1 losses against those infantry. Air units come in to try and help those troops on the southern edge of the map, but they don't really accomplish anything. And we're on to turn number 8. So obviously we don't finish this battle. There wasn't enough. Well, we weren't moving forward quickly enough with our turns. We do 1-4 against this enemy recon car in the river. It ends up being 2-3. Again, sometimes I forget to use my artillery until it's too late. So just try and hit this enemy armor. Beat him up a bit. Probably move the armored train back. Pull the armor back, try and get him out of range of enemy air. Really is the only tactic to try and save him again from a victory point of view. I didn't manage a full breakthrough in my Let's Play either, but we'll advance these infantry, see if we can destroy that enemy infantry unit in the river. We will deal with enemy fire. We don't. We cripple them, but we don't defeat them. Alright, we could try and hit this enemy tank unit in the river here. Suppress it a bit, then hit it with the armored car. One of the best things about the recon cars is the fact that they can move twice in a turn. So you can move them, attack, and move them again. So we do that, we attack with them, then we pull them back. Then we move this 15th, 7th TP JW word salad Polish tank forward here. 3-1 casualties. Infantry in the town. Gonna stay put. Anti-aircraft. Should probably change them back over to anti-aircraft. Right now they're in anti-tank mode. Move our armored train back over towards Silesia to hit the recon truck there maybe, or the infantry behind him. Probably the infantry behind him, because that infantry can move forward and still into the river hex this turn. They won't move past it, but they'll move into it. Keep moving the infantry south to try and get out of range. Artillery continues its fighting withdrawal. Move our armor around here. Enemy anti-tank gun's going to prevent us from probably being too successful, but we at least slow the enemy a bit there. Since he moved his grenadiers towards Silesia, he was not flanking them toward Brest, so I did finally make the decision to move the infantry out of Brest to go support Silesia, because again, another full-strength infantry unit would be very valuable. That's pretty much it. I mean, our troops are torn up. We don't really have a lot of other options at this point. Only one place are the Germans on the river. So, and I don't think a 7 recon car is going to defeat a 7 anti-tank gun. So, overall, I think we're safe from losing any objectives for another turn. He totally gave up in the north, which is kind of surprising. That's an easy objective to take up near Bialystok. Even if you sort of trip up initially, those are victory points he should have tried to go for, especially when, you know, when he lost a couple of the units he lost. He could have reinforced, pulled a unit in there to the objective, which is literally just near it, within a single turn's march of it. But he just gave up. We bloodied his nose up there. We didn't destroy either of the units that attacked, but we nearly did, and we crippled him, and he just gave up. Meanwhile, I think this anti-tank gun's pretty safe from the enemy armor. It's so heavily suppressed. You can't use the undo feature in the multiplayer, by the way. I think we'd just be better off switching this anti-tank gun back to... I've got it set to anti-tank, so it will support the infantry there against enemy armored attacks. But it's probably better to just switch it back to anti-aircraft to try and prevent these Stukas from coming in effectively. And you can see the radius of which the anti-aircraft can fire from. Move the infantry out of Warsaw. They probably will die if they get destroyed, if they get attacked, but at least providing some support to the troops in that town. And then we move into the final turn here. So the final turn of this battle, less than 8 hours before the time runs out in round 1. Enemy armor is going to come in here and finish off my tank. So that's a unit destroyed. He did attack my artillery piece there. Did do some damage. But again, he's not... Nowhere here is he in a position to... And he destroyed another infantry unit there, so he did close the gap a little bit in terms of victory value. Infantry comes forward here towards Silesia. The funny thing is, even if they drove that anti-tank gun back, they would not have been able to take the town, because they've already moved. Somehow this infantry unit in the town's considered encircled. I don't know why. Those infantry survived that attack somehow. Anti-tank gun moves against my tank, but the artillery effectively suppresses them. The infantry do come up. They drove them back. Drove that armor back and then tried to attack it, but the armor survived. And so here we are. I didn't know it at the time, but this is the final turn of our battle. I probably could have just stood pat and won. I'll show you the score in a little bit, but spoiler alert! It's already posted publicly, so I won the battle! Well, not just this battle, but between the two I won. We're fighting Kazarine at the moment. I'm fighting against Twiglets. But yeah. Now, unfortunately, because we didn't finish the battle, there was no, like, pretty splash screen at the end that explained what happened or went over a summary. Again, we didn't finish the battle. We ran out of time. We got through 9 turns. I was winning at the conclusion of those 9 turns. But, you know, we didn't get to the final 15. I think I probably still would have won if we got to the 15. My German turn was in a good enough place that I don't think I would have lost. But yeah. Anyway, there's not a lot else to show here, so I guess we might as well jump forward to the score, and I can show you guys what happened, because I don't think there's nothing else I do here really meaningfully. So there you can see the current scores as of 2 a.m. on 7:31 Central Time. You can see in round 1, I faced off against Baldric, which was Strategos Xenophon, I believe. At least that's my process of elimination between all the other names here. You can see I won 1,239 to 880. It ended up being a pretty convincing victory, I would say. Like 300 plus points. LT beat Hexaboo by more than that. But other than that, it was the second largest margin of victory. I move forward and I'm facing Twiglets right now, currently in the Battle of Kazarine. We're in like turn 3 or 4 or so still pretty early. But that's kind of where things are at the moment. Let me know if you want to see the German version of this first round. Probably won't reveal the Kazarine results until a little bit later, or maybe we'll look at some of the early turn stuff. Maybe I'll break it into 2 turns. It's quite a bit of a bigger battle. If I do manage to beat Twiglets, which I'm not confident, I'm playing a very high-risk, high-reward strategy in that game, so we'll see. But so fair chance I'll fail. But in the event that I do manage to beat Twiglets, then I will play in the finals against either LT or Steak English. It seems like Steak English has a pretty meaningful lead at the moment over LT Gaming, but I don't have access to that screen, so I can't say what he's got over there. Anyway, guys, hope you guys enjoyed this video and this look at the multiplayer system for Panzer Corps II, and frankly, this is how most of the play-by-email plus multiplayer turn-based games work for Slytherin. Thanks to Slytherin for including me in the Clash of Streamers event. And that's going to do it for today. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Until next time, this is the Historical Gamer once again saying thank you very much for watching. And until next time, I'm out.